Do you remember the time when cars had soul? When every curve of the hood and every engine roar told a story? Well, today, we're stepping into a true time capsule. But this isn't just any journey. It's a freezing expedition through the machines that defied the impossible on ice and snow. Picture yourself in the middle of a whiteout storm. Wind slashing your face and visibility down to zero. What do you need? A real SUV. None of that modern electronic stuff. We're talking about old-school beasts, born to work, explore, and survive in extreme environments. Now tell me, what's the toughest and most reliable classic SUV you've ever seen tearing through snow-covered trails? If you love vehicles that didn't just mark generations, but made history where others wouldn't dare to go, hold tight. Because this is a journey through the best vintage off-road SUVs for snow, and trust me, the number one will leave you speechless. Stick with me till the end. The last one on this list is nothing short of legendary. Lada Niva 1970s. In the Soviet Union of the 1970s, ruggedness wasn't optional. It was a requirement. And it was in this harsh setting that the Lada Niva was born in 1977, a creation by ATVs that became a global off-road icon. Don't let its compact looks fool you. This machine was built to take on mud, rocks, and lots of snow. Under the hood, the Niva came with a 1.6-liter four-cylinder inline engine, delivering around 75 horsepower. That may sound modest today, but back then, and with a lean weight of just over 1 ton, it was more than enough to climb frozen hills like they were dry slopes. The all-wheel drive system was permanent, with a central locking differential and mechanical low range, a rare innovation for a compact SUV in the 70s. Its independent front suspension provided better stability, while the rigid rear axle soaked up hits from frozen trails. Visually, the Niva was basic, almost Spartan, but that was part of its charm. Inside, hard seats and a minimalistic dashboard reminded you that comfort came second. Getting where others got stuck was the priority. The metallic growl of the engine, mixed with the sound of snow being crushed by narrow tires, created a soundtrack of pure Soviet endurance. It was widely used in frozen regions of Russia, Siberia, and even Iceland, where it became a favorite for exploring snow-covered volcanoes. There's even a well-known story of a Lada Niva used by Soviet geologists that racked up over 300,000 kilometers in extreme environments without ever needing a full engine replacement. And don't think it's just nostalgia. It's still sold in some countries with almost no changes, a testament to its simple, no-nonsense efficiency. Sound cool? Just wait for what's next. Land Rover Series 2A 88 1960s. If the Lada Niva was a compact Soviet tank, the Land Rover Series 2A 88, launched in 1961, was the adventurous British explorer. Built by the iconic Land Rover, this short wheelbase model, 88 inches, was practically a physical embodiment of the drive to explore the unknown. Under the hood, it usually came with a 2.25-liter four-cylinder engine, offering just over 70 horsepower, paired with a 4-speed manual gearbox and low-range transfer case. It was all raw mechanics. Everything depended on the driver's skill. The four-wheel drive could be activated via a simple floor lever. No buttons, no electronics. Just you and the machine, tackling frozen trails, thick ice, and snow-capped mountains. Its boxy look, rounded headlights, and aluminum body gave it a bold presence. And despite the ruggedness, there was a classic elegance to the way it crossed unforgiving landscapes. The Series 2A was widely used in Arctic expeditions and by the British military in snowy regions like Norway and northern Scotland. With narrow tires, it could cut through ice without sinking, and its light weight helped it glide across terrain where flotation was more valuable than brute traction. And here's something interesting. Many of these vehicles are still in use today, running with minimal maintenance on farms and in mountainous regions. True veterans of frozen trails. If you thought that British legend was fearless, hold on tight, because up next is America's first true luxury SUV. Jeep Grand Wagoneer 1980s. In the 1980s, the United States decided off-roading could be done in style. That's when the Jeep Grand Wagoneer was born, in 1984, the very first luxury SUV in American history. Imagine blending executive comfort with the guts of a war-ready Jeep. That was the Grand Wagoneer. It came with a 5.9-liter V8 engine, putting out around 140 horsepower, enough to move its nearly 2,000 kilograms across snow-covered trails with both power and grace. Its four-wheel drive system was selectable, and many models came with automatic transmission, soft suspension, and power steering. It was a rolling lounge that took on the cold like a seasoned lumberjack in Colorado. Its appearance was unmistakable: wood-look side panels, rectangular headlights, and a bold front end. Inside, you had heated leather seats, real wood trim, and plenty of space. The Grand Wagoneer became the go-to SUV for wealthy families living in the mountains, ski resorts, and snow-covered ranches. Some even use them as limousines in snowy regions due to their bold presence and reliable performance. And did you know it was one of the first SUVs to come with factory-installed AC and premium sound systems? It was true luxury, but still a beast underneath. Loving this ride through snowbound legends? Then go ahead and smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications, because here the cold never stops, and the machines only get more impressive. Speaking of brute force, the next one on the list was built to go head-to-head with any frozen mountain. International Harvester Scout II, 1970s. In 1971, while the world watched the space race and the birth of the microchip, a true ground vehicle began conquering frozen off-road terrain: the International Harvester Scout II. Built by the classic International Harvester, this was the evolution of the original 1961 Scout, now wider, stronger, and far more prepared to go to war against the cold. The Scout II came with various engine options, but the most iconic were the 5.6 and even 6.6-liter V8s, producing between 150 and 190 horsepower, depending on the configuration. With that much power, it could practically rip frozen trees from the ground and make snow-covered trails feel like paved roads. Its suspension was reinforced with solid axles front and rear, ideal for absorbing heavy impacts in rough terrain. Four-wheel drive could be activated on demand, and many models came with manual transmissions, giving drivers full control even on steep, slippery climbs. Visually, the Scout II had tough, squared-off lines with round headlights that gave it the look of a beast watching its prey. Inside, it was spacious, functional, and simply finished, but strong, just like a true winter-ready utility vehicle should be. This SUV became famous in regions like the Rocky Mountains, Alaska, and Canada, where it was used by explorers, farmers, and even rescue teams in hard-to-reach snow-covered zones. In one documented expedition in the late 70s, a Scout II drove more than 4,000 kilometers through frozen Yukon routes in Canada, facing temperatures as low as -40 degrees Celsius, and returned under its own power. Today, it's revered by collectors and enthusiasts who recognize a true gem from the golden era of utility vehicles. Thought that was tough? Wait for the next one. The ultimate symbol of American SUV muscle with a V8 that means business. Chevrolet K5 Blazer, 1970s. In 1969, Chevrolet jumped headfirst into the SUV game and launched the K5 Blazer, a square-bodied giant with a truck engine and tank-like traction. This model owned the 1970s, becoming a true legend of American off-roading, and it stood out in frozen regions thanks to its raw power and mechanical reliability. The K5 Blazer came with V8 engines ranging from 5.0 to 6.6 liters, producing between 150 and over 250 horsepower, depending on the year and version. The most iconic was the 350 cubic inch engine, which struck the perfect balance between power and durability. With four-wheel drive, a low-range transfer case, and tough suspension, it could handle terrain completely buried in snow, steep icy inclines, and nearly zero traction. Wide tires and reinforced components helped it stay stable and push through, even with more than 2,000 kilograms of weight. Visually, the K5 Blazer commanded attention. Straight lines, tall squared front end, dual headlights, and a removable rear roof in some models. Inside, space was abundant. Wide seats, a metal dashboard, and the feeling of driving a luxury tractor. Many of these vehicles were used by fire departments in snowy areas, forest rangers, and even in Alaska expeditions, thanks to their load capacity and bulletproof mechanics. Today, restored models can reach sky-high prices among collectors. Fun fact, there's a 1972 Blazer modified with track systems that became a tourist attraction at a ski resort in Canada. A true legend with the heart of a snow tank. Think you've seen power? Grab your coat. The next SUV is a classic that was intimidating just by the sound of its engine. Classic Ford Bronco, 1960s to 1970s. It was 1966 when Ford launched the Bronco, its first compact four-wheel drive utility vehicle. The idea was simple: create a competitor for the Jeep CJ and the Scout. But what Ford ended up building was something much bigger, an American icon that still stirs passion today. The classic Bronco started with 2.8-liter inline six-cylinder engines, but quickly evolved into beefier options, like the 4.9-liter V8, 302 cubic inches, delivering around 205 horsepower. That was impressive for the time, especially considering the weight and the brutal conditions it was designed to endure. With selectable four-wheel drive, a coil spring front suspension, and leaf springs in the rear, the Bronco was smoother and more refined than many rivals. That gave it an edge when tackling slick or heavily snowed-in trails. Its appearance is all charm: short hood, flared fenders, and a grille that looks like it's grinning with confidence. Inside, it was all metal panels and basic gauges, more military than civilian, which was exactly the point. The Bronco was widely used on Rocky Mountain ranches, in Wyoming farms, and even by the military during winter training missions. Its popularity grew so much that some modified Broncos were even entered into off-road snow races. One of the most curious facts: a Colorado dealership used to sell Broncos already equipped for snow trails, with snow tires, chains, snowplows, and auxiliary heaters installed from the factory. If you thought the Bronco was all about style, the next SUV brought British brutality into the snow, with brilliant simplicity. Classic Land Rover Defender, 1980s. In 1983, Land Rover introduced the 110 and 90 models, the foundation of what would soon become the legendary Defender. This SUV was built to go where others feared to tread, and it quickly proved itself in extreme conditions, including Scandinavia, Canada, and the European Alps. Under the hood, it featured 2.5-liter four-cylinder diesel engines, producing between 68 and 85 horsepower, depending on the version. It may not sound like much, but all the power came at low revs, perfect for climbing icy terrain without spinning out. The four-wheel drive system was permanent, with a lockable center differential, and the rigid axle suspension with coil springs gave it the ability to handle heavy loads while staying stable on rough, frozen ground. Its look screamed utilitarian. Boxy frame, flat windows, reinforced structure. Getting inside felt like entering a military vehicle adapted for civilian life. And in many ways, that's exactly what it was. The Defender was heavily used by armed forces and humanitarian organizations in snowy environments. It also became the go-to vehicle for wildlife photographers who spent days and nights in polar regions, including a version equipped with a diesel-powered cabin heater for expeditions in northern Iceland. You can't help but be impressed by the Defender. But now, the Japanese giants enter the scene, and at that level, cold is just another detail. Enjoying this icy journey through the most legendary SUVs of all time? Then do this now. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next video. Around here, the adventure is always raw and real. Stick around, because the next SUV is a Japanese-born legend that's going to blow you away. Nissan Patrol GQ Y60, 1980s. In 1987, Japan proved it could absolutely build vehicles for the harshest environments on Earth. And the name of the beast? The Nissan Patrol GQ Y60. This was the fourth generation of the Patrol, and the first to bring radical upgrades, instantly becoming a legend in the world of frozen off-roading. Under the hood, the GQ Y60 offered several engine options. But the most revered was the 4.2-liter inline six-cylinder diesel, producing about 125 horsepower, all focused on torque and durability. It was a beast of an engine, built to last hundreds of thousands of kilometers without breaking a sweat. Its four-wheel drive system included low-range gearing, a locking rear differential, and coil spring suspension on all four wheels, rare at the time, and a game-changer in terms of handling on rough or frozen terrain. Climbing snow-covered mountains became almost smooth. Visually, it screamed 1980s, boxy, rugged, no frills. The GQ Y60 looked like a civilian tank. Inside, the dashboard was simple, the steering heavy, and the seats tall, putting you in total command of a machine made to go to war with winter. It was widely used in New Zealand, Iceland, and Alaska, especially by expedition guides and rescue teams. A cool fact, in Iceland, you can still find heavily modified GQ Y60s with giant tires and raised suspensions, used to cross lava fields buried in deep snow. The GQ Y60 earned a reputation for powering out of deep snow pits, where even military vehicles got stuck. It was Japanese force with surgical precision. But if the Patrol was a ninja on ice, the next SUV was a full-blown general on the frozen battlefield. Mercedes-Benz G-Class W460 1970s. Launched in 1979, the Mercedes-Benz G-Class W460 was originally built for military use, but it quickly won over the civilian world, especially those living in snow-covered mountains and harsh climates. The most iconic version came with a 2.4-liter, four-cylinder diesel engine, though later models included V6 and even V8 gasoline options. The stronger gasoline versions delivered up to 150 horsepower, more than enough to conquer icy climbs and long frozen treks. Built on a body-on-frame chassis with solid axles and heavy-duty suspension, it had a four-wheel drive system equipped with 3 differential locks, front, center, and rear. That setup allowed the G-Class to climb pure ice like it was dry pavement. The design was pure military charm, straight lines, flared fenders, metal handles, and a body that looked like it could survive an avalanche. Inside, it ranged from Spartan to luxury, depending on the version. But one thing never changed. Nothing stopped this monster in the snow. For years, the G-Class served with European armies, UN humanitarian missions, and even Arctic expeditions, where its mechanical reliability made a life-or-death difference in places where getting stuck could mean freezing, literally. And here's a little-known detail. A special version of the G-Class W460, outfitted with polar survival gear, was used by German researchers in Antarctica. Proof that this machine wasn't just built to drive through snow, it was built to dominate it. But if the G-Class is a rolling fortress, the SUV that takes the #1 spot is still considered, to this day, the most reliable 4x4 in history. And when it comes to snow, it wears the crown. Toyota Land Cruiser 80 Series, 1990s. We've reached the top. It's 1990, and Toyota introduces the 80 Series Land Cruiser, an SUV that redefined what off-road durability, comfort, and capability could mean. A true Japanese masterpiece, built to withstand time, cold, and the most brutal terrain on Earth. The most legendary engine in this series was the 4.2-liter turbo diesel inline six, pushing out up to 168 horsepower and massive torque, enough to make this nearly 3-ton beast glide across frozen fields like it was coasting down a highway. It had full-time 4-wheel drive, a lockable center differential, and some versions even featured front and rear axle lockers. Combine that with coil spring suspension on all 4 wheels and solid axles, and you had an SUV that was both comfortable and unstoppable. Visually, it was understated and elegant. Big headlights, flat hood, wide body. Inside, it felt like an executive sedan, but one that could cross a frozen canyon in the middle of nowhere. Heated seats, powerful air conditioning, and flawless build quality completed the package. The Land Cruiser 80 was used by rescue teams, environmental agencies, security forces, and scientific expeditions in places like the Himalayas, the South Pole, and remote regions of Russia and Canada. And here's a fun fact. To this day, some 80 series models are still operating in places so remote that even aviation fuel isn't available, only raw diesel. And yet, they still run like they just rolled out of the factory. That's why the Land Cruiser 80 series takes the #1 spot, because it's not just an SUV, it's a living legend of frozen trails. These weren't just SUVs. They were machines built to survive where humans can barely breathe. Vehicles that faced the cold, the elements, and the limits of engineering, and came out victorious. From the Soviet Lada Niva to the mighty Land Cruiser, we just took a ride through a collection of true legends of the ice, each with its own soul, its own story, and its own mark on the off-road world. These machines aren't just metal and motors. They're living chapters of a time when reliability came before electronics, and strength was measured in sweat, gasoline, and grit. So tell me, which of these vintage SUVs do you own or wish you could own? Which one surprised you the most? Know someone who owns one of these legends? Send them this video and show them the beast they've got in their garage. Let's talk about it in the comments. And of course, if you love content about legendary machines, subscribe now, hit the bell, and leave a like, because every week we bring you new videos featuring the toughest, wildest, and most unforgettable vehicles in history, especially the ones that take on the cold with a hot engine and an indestructible soul. See you in the next video.